Mech Minutes! Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. This is the start of a new series that I'm calling Mech Minutes, with the idea being that every week I will make a 5 to 8 minute video in which I paint up a single BattleTech blind box, as well as explain the lore, the history, any funny quirks, and any notable pilots of the mech within. The aim with this series is to make the channel a whole hell of a lot more consistent, as well as offer you a nice video to watch while you brush your teeth, do something else on your computer, or whenever you just want some light lore and painting wrapped up into one seamless bundle. The blind box I have opened is of the legendary Mechwarriors 2 and 3 line, and the mech contained within is a Loki Mark II, a 65-ton clan-heavy Omni-mech, which is very cool, as it is piloted by none other than a bounty hunter. But not just any bounty hunter, the bounty hunter. So, who is the bounty hunter? Well, the bounty hunter is basically the Dread Pirate Roberts of the BattleTech universe. It is a mantle passed down from Mechwarrior to Mechwarrior either when the previous bounty hunter dies, or they just retire and pass it down to one of their lancemates. The earliest known sightings of this mysterious figure originate all the way back in the 30th century, with a bounty hunter operating a lime green warhammer and using it to hunt down particularly nasty pieces of work, pirates, criminals, and the like. Because of this, the bounty hunter started off with a pretty good folk hero-esque reputation, although this got muddled somewhat later as different bounty hunters dropped any and all sense of honor and chivalry. Which brings us all the way back up to Mechwarrior, which is the character that we will be painting up today. He is operating in the 32nd century, and he was originally the bounty hunter before he decided to retire and pass off the mantle down to one of his lancemates. But then this lancemate was murdered by a psychopath, and then this psychopath used the persona of the bounty hunter to commit several serial killings. And obviously Mechwarrior didn't like this, so getting back in the saddle of his lime green Loki Mark II, he's going off to find this son of a bitch and bring him down. As for paint scheme, he operates a nice lime green with a checkerboard pattern on the front. So to get started with this, I give him a coat of the Army Painter's ash gray before dry brushing on some white to give it some more highlights and definition. After this, I give it a thin down coat of the Army Painter's green skin as a base coat. With the base coat of green nicely applied, I decide to fill in some of the joints and any other places that shouldn't be green with the gray. The Loki Mark II is a clan Omni-mech of 65 tons, developed in the year 3121 by Clan Jade Falcon. Although it has nothing too special on the actual chassis front, its biggest bonus is having 40 tons of pod space, which allows it to carry a wide variety of different loadouts and offensive options. Before I continue on, I slightly darken some of the Army Painter's green skin with a bit of black, and then I stipple it on in the center of all the armor plates. After this is done, I then apply a coat of the Army Painter's strong tone, which is a very good brown wash. I do this all in the aims of having a really good base layer and gradient because in my opinion, one of the most important things you can do on a model is make sure that the base color is fun and interesting to look at. The prime variant of the Loki Mark II has 12 double heat sinks, a moderately high top speed of 64 km per hour, and 8 tons of ferrofibrous armor. In terms of weaponry, it has 2 Gauss rifles, 2 extended range large lasers, and 1 Streak SRM-4 for close range. The prime variant is definitely geared more towards long range sniping than anything else. With the brown wash nice and applied, in order to add further surface interest, I decide to add a coat of the Army Painter's green tone. This is a very nice wash that'll definitely help make the green pop all the more. As the name would suggest, the Loki Mark II is an upgrade of the previous Loki battle mech. The Loki, or as it is known to the clans as the Hellbringer, was a very widespread design developed by Clan Hell's forces in 2926. And though the Hellbringer had a very good reputation and a much higher top speed of 86 km per hour, the biggest issue with it is that it lacked a lot of the army that the later Loki Mark II would be upgraded to. However, one good thing that it did pass down to its predecessor is the large pod capacity. Something unintended happened. I accidentally had some rubbing alcohol mixed in with my cleaning water, and well, it stripped off some of the paint around the edges of the panels while I was applying the wash. And well, I would be mad about something like this normally, but it actually made it look a lot more weathered and kind of highlighted, so in the end it was actually a pretty good consequence, all things considered. But anyway, now it's time to move on to one of the funnest and yet most difficult parts of the mech. That would be the checkerboard pattern on his lapel. Mixing some green skin with some yellow and white, I then just apply that in a freehand way to make a checkerboard. I wish I could give you more details on what I did here, but it was basically just a lot of faffing around and experimenting with different blends of green, and just following my intuition. Then, using a little bit of pure white, I do an edge highlight pass, just to make certain panels and the mech itself pop more. The original Loki/Hellbringer garnered itself a very good reputation among the clans. Being something of a glass cannon, well, ill-suited for long wars of attrition, was still an all-around solid and easy-to-produce mech, although it mostly fell off during the Wars of Reaving, which is basically the Succession Wars but for the clans, a period of intense fighting in which the original clan homeworlds lost almost all contact with their brethren in the Inner Sphere, completely cutting them off and basically going dark from the years of 3067 to 3080. Only a few decades later, the Loki Mark IIs would start rolling off the production lines, and despite the venerable reputation of the original Loki, the Loki Mark II never really took off. Not to say that it was a bad mech by any stretch of the imagination, it's just that instead of having its own little niche like the original Loki was, it was more comparable to other clan heavy hitters like the Timberwolf or the Kodiak or something like that. And it's not like it couldn't do this job, it's just that there were better options that kinda overshadowed the Loki Mark II. It could do it, just not quite as well. The primary users of the Loki Mark II were Clan Jade Falcon and Clan Hell's Horses, and Clan Jade Falcon's nickname for the Loki Mark II was the Sloki, so I guess that kinda tells you all you really need to know about the reputation that this thing garnered. With the base coat and the checkerboard pretty much all completed, it is time to move on to all the little fine details. So to start out, I'm going to paint up the cockpit and also the laser ports with a silver, so that'll make them a lot shinier later. And then for the lasers, I will paint the large ones blue, and then also there's a little missile guidance place on the Streak SRM4, and I'm just going to paint that red like it is on the card. There are also some little floodlights on the chest of the mech, so I also paint those red too. I then use some yellow mixed with a bit of red to create this nice orange as a base coat for the cockpit. I intend to make it look a little bit shinier later. So I then created a lovely gradient on the heat sinks on the back of the mech, going from a nice ketchup chip red on the outside to a bright yellow on the inside that I thought looked very nice and warm. I then started on the base, in which I applied a layer of ballast and painted it brown, but I forgot to hit record for any of this, so you're just gonna have to take my word that it happened. I then decided that this base needed rock and some snow because I didn't feel like having yet another grass base. So taking a small piece of cork that seemed to be in scale, I superglued it to the back, and then I used some of the Army Painter's basing glue to apply a layer and then pushed it around with my brush to get the snow where I wanted it to. I kind of want this to look like a slushy, late winter, early spring kind of snow, so I left a lot of the dirt showing. Once I had finished painting up the rock a nice gray, I was ready to add the snow. So I've never used this stuff before, so I just poured it on where the glue was, and one thing I didn't know is that it appears to be water soluble. It turned into this nice 2-scale snow slush paste when it came into contact with the glue, which was very good for my purposes, and I was very happy with how this turned out. Well, it may not have been the most respected battle mech of all time. If it's good enough for a bounty hunter, quite frankly, it's good enough for me. And in the hands of someone like Michi Fraser, I think that they could definitely do some work with this thing. His first ever recorded action was stealing a Legionnaire from the Federated Suns and using it to kill an entire lance of Draconis Combine mechs single-handedly. So, you know what? I think you could probably do something with this heavy Omni mech. Anyway, this has been Semi-Historical Wargaming. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and I hope to see you in the next Mech Minute.